Thanks for joining us, everyone, on this special but sad day with the passing over the weekend of the longtime and great host of this program, JT Williamson. And joining us now, a great friend of the program and also of JT, Mr. Sid Salter, political analyst and chief communications officer and director of the Office of Public Affairs at Mississippi State University. Good morning, Sid. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Gerard. I don't really know what to say, which is not something that frequently passes my lips. But JT was a tremendous friend during my days at SuperTalk. I learned a great deal from him about modern radio. I mean, I got into radio in the very early 1970s and then, kind of veered off in the late 70s into print journalism. And so when I came back to SuperTalk in the 2000s, I had a lot to learn, the digital revolution. And JT was so patient and kind to help me and to help me get up to speed. We traveled a lot together doing remotes to all corners of the state, and he was a lot of fun on the road. We had a lot in common. He really loved his family, and he really loved Mississippi State University, both those things right up my alley. And I think something that people overlook when they look over JT's life, he was incredibly generous with the platform that he had built, raising money for Palmer Home, giving a lot of airtime to programs that benefited autistic children. He just was a super guy. One of the things that my family always appreciated, he would come to the Neshoba County Fair, and he was kind of a frequent flyer at our cabin, and he loved those big, kind of dinner on the ground lunches, but he always brought a couple of pork loins off his smoker, and he was really a great cook. And so when I think back on his struggle for the last 18 months, it breaks my heart. I talked to him a great deal when he was diagnosed. He had a lot of questions because he knew that I'd been down the path that he was beginning. And, cancer is a cruel SOB. I mean, it is a hard road, and it really takes a lot out of you. JT was not afraid to die. Not at all. He fought with courage. He fought with good humor. He never lost his faith in God. The last text I got from him was that the last procedure in Houston had not gone well, but that he was holding fast to God's hand to get through this. And so I'm going to miss him as a person. The state will miss him as a broadcaster, but I'm going to miss him as a friend. And my prayers are with his wife and his children and his close friends, all the people at SuperTalk, behind the scenes. Gary, Houston, all of the guys who make sure the trains run on time there, and of course, I would be remiss if I didn't remind people, Steve Davenport has a reputation as a kind of a tough nut, but I've never seen anybody step up behind a friend and a colleague the way Steve has. JT wanted for nothing. He had the love and support of his professional family, and, kudos to Steve and everyone at SuperTalk for supporting JT through that journey. I had that kind of support on mine, and it means the world to you.
That's such a great point. Thanks for sharing that and bringing that up as well. And you're right. We would be remiss if we didn't share our kudos and gratitude to Steve and the network for the way they handled this, which I believe was totally appropriate and I just think consistent with their good business philosophy and the culture that they have built here in the company. Coming from a different industry, but sitting in Steve's chair, so to speak, I certainly understand that, and I recognize that, and we are appreciative for that. Something else you said, though, Sid, that struck me about JT's generosity in being willing to help people. And the folks that he helped may not realize it, but you could argue he got more out of that than they did. He just felt like that in any situations where he could lend a hand, that he was going to jump on that and do it. And he just got great satisfaction out of seeing people utilize his talents where he could share that to help them get better.
He really did. And, of course, coming out of a background in the Golden Triangle, JT knew a lot about Palmer Home and the good work that institution does, and so he was anxious to help. I also worked with JT on game day remotes that he did here. He loved visiting with fellow Bulldogs, and he loved razzing the supporters of our opponents, and he had a lot of fun. And of course the athletic department, our administration, he had a marvelous friendship with Dr. Keenum. And so everyone here in Starkville and at Mississippi State shares in the grief of the SuperTalk audience over JT's passing. It's just incredibly sad. I wanted so badly for JT to get the miracle he was seeking in his treatment, and if it were based on effort or want to, it would have happened for him. One thing you have to accept dealing with cancer is that, sometimes it's God's plan for you to survive, and sometimes it's God's plan for you to come home. Mm-hmm. And so JT was good with it either way. He wanted to stay with his family. He wanted to get back on the air. I never had an exchange with him that he didn't tell me how much he wanted to return to his audience, but that was not God's plan for him. And I tell you what, he's got a marvelous platform in his new home, and I think JT would say right now it's well with his soul.
Yeah, I think you're right, and you're also just spot on in describing his attitude throughout the entire ordeal. As you know, we had him on as a call-in guest many times on his program as I was hosting, and he always maintained that upbeat and positive attitude, and he told his audience, I'm going to be back, and he was serious about that. I just believe that it's that attitude, that mindset, that sentiment that enabled him to stay with us as long as he was.
Well, I agree, and again, he was and JT's like me and some others, he's a little rough around the edges, but he was at the core a Christian gentleman. Yep. He was a great husband and father. He's the kind of guy you wanted for a neighbor. And I mean, he loved the things that Mississippians loved: high school and college athletics. He always tried to put his shoulder to the wheel when he felt it was needed. Yeah. And just a super guy. Yeah, absolutely. Sid, we got to go here, but man, we sure do appreciate you calling in and sharing some of your personal relationship and stories about JT, and I'm sure we'll talk soon. Thanks, Sid. Thanks.